Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Once again, Coffee Talk is for conspiracy theories or ideas that I find interesting but don't necessarily believe. And it's a fun time here on the channel. Full disclosure, I'm a Christian minister, and this channel talks about Jesus most of the time, but on Fridays we have a little bit of fun. And we set it up so you can have Saturday morning coffee the next morning with me, and watch the Coffee Talks. Before we get into today's Coffee Talk, I want to encourage you that if you enjoy these Coffee Talks and you'd like to see them continue, that you would contribute to the ministry here to keep these videos and my ministry-oriented videos together. Keep them coming to you. And so if you would, please click on the description there and click on the link to PayPal and throw some coffee money my way so we can continue to make these videos. As my regular viewers know, if I have to work a full-time day job, I don't make videos. I had one of my viewers say, if he had to work full-time and make videos, it would just be videos about him cutting up trees, because that's what he does for a living. You don't have time for nothing but that and sleeping. I can relate. But yes, this allows me to continue to make these videos, so please contribute there or send me something to my P.O. box. All right, today's Coffee Talk is about extraterrestrial biological entities. Don't. So apparently, a few years back, there was a video being distributed of an alien interrogation or alien interview. And I don't want to confuse this with the alien autopsy video. I think that's been clearly debunked. There were articles in that video that were from a time period much later than when it was supposed to have occurred. And I had all of the signs of a Hollywood type of video, a fictional event. But the alien interview video is much different. So let's do some background on the EBEs, or extraterrestrial biological entities. So all of this, once again, starts in 1947. We have heard of alien encounters and UFOs being sighted all the way down through American history and into antiquity. But in 1947, an event occurs in Roswell, New Mexico that changes the world. Don't. Now, everybody knows all about the aircraft that crashed, the fact that they might have their spacecraft, the fact that there were deceased alien bodies found in that wreckage. But what few people know is that there were 2 UFOs that night, and the other UFO crashed in a different location. It was crashed mainly intact, and one entity, one EBE, let's just shorten it and call them EBEs. One of the EBEs was deceased, but the other one was alive and well. We will call him EBE number 1. This EBE was taken into custody and held for a number of years. He was purported to have died in 1952, so he lived with us in a secret location here in the United States. Now, this is also tied to Area 51, Groom Lake, don't. But more specifically, an area south of that location, still very close to Area 51, in the same, what would you say, region there, the same controlled area. And it's called S4, and it's super secret. We first hear about S4 from a man named Bob Lazar. Many of you know who Bob Lazar is or was. He first surfaces in 1989, and he becomes the biggest whistleblower in the history of the secret space program. Don't. And he basically says that he was tasked and worked at S4 for the purpose of backwards or reverse engineering the technology, specifically the propulsion and drive system of a UFO. Now, he claims that the one that he worked on was very old. It was more than 10,000 years old, and it was an archaeological find, not from a crash. And it had been embedded in the fossil record, and it indicated it had been there more than 10,000 years. And so archaeologists working on a separate, normal archaeological site uncover this UFO. It's then taken to the S4 area where it is examined. Now, back to EBE1, back in 1947 to 1952. Apparently, and these are all of what you might call the grays, that the earliest interactions were with what you would consider grays: big head, big eyes, little bitty mouth and face. And apparently, EBE1 was not able to speak. And to communicate with him, they had to bring in a empath, a psychic person, and he could then hear the thoughts of EBE1 and communicate in that way. And through that method, they devised a written language that both could understand, a form of hieroglyphs, pictures that represented words. And through that effort, they were able to speak to him through written word without by pointing at the different characters to form the sentences and to facilitate communication. And after he died in 52, there was another crash in 1953 that few people talk about or know about. That in this crash, EBE2 was captured along with several other entities that perished. And so EBE2 also was not capable of speech, but had come here already retrofitted with an electronic device attached to his throat that allowed him to speak English. And he was apparently pretty well versed in it. He lived with them for quite some time. Now, EBE2, we're not sure how long he lived. He did eventually pass away. Apparently, these entities don't do well in our atmosphere for long periods of time. They have trouble getting the proper nutrients from the flora and fauna on this planet, and feeding them becomes an issue. And essentially, they end up perishing from malnutrition and overworking their organs trying to process our air. And one of the things that I find interesting is that they all claim to be very sensitive to light. So most of the interviews and interactions with these entities were done in a near dark situation with very, very subdued lighting. And it makes me think of the Gremlins. Bright light, bright light. Interestingly enough, demons are considered creatures of the night. They don't come out in the daylight. They only come out at night, the strange and dangerous type. And in some ways, these aliens slash demons are the creatures of mythology, the creatures that stalk the night. Dun dun dun. So as a Christian minister, my mind goes immediately to demons. Demons and aliens, I believe, are the same thing. But Christians would argue no, because demons don't have a physical body. They're a spiritual being. And I'm an exorcist, so I have driven out of people and fought off these entities in their spiritual form off of humans for many years now, for most of my career as a minister. And I still to this day engage in that practice, and I'm quite effective at it. And the reason being is that these spiritual entities that we call demons don't have a legal right to be here. They don't have a legal right to interfere. They are not authorized by God to interfere in our world, but they do anyway, and they're lawbreakers to a degree. When faced with true authority, when the proper stream of words and commands are uttered by someone who is operating in faith and that authority, then these entities must flee. The Bible tells us, resist the devil and he must flee from you. That is a fact. So why would I think that aliens who have a physical form, who fly around in physical aircraft or spacecraft would also be the demons that vex people in the spiritual realm. Well, as we learn from EBE1, they operate through telepathy. Many of your abductees, your people that are abducted by aliens, report that they communicate with each other and to you through telepathy. And so I've always said that the only power that the devil has is to deceive you. And I think this is definitely proven through spiritual practices that they primarily deceive you. They can deceive you by implanting thoughts, by speaking as though they're you, by impersonating God, and by projecting images or dreams into your waking state, or even causing you to have hallucinations and altered senses of reality. I think the aliens and the demons are the same thing. That the spiritual apparition or the spiritual demon that attacks people is simply one of these extraterrestrial biological entities that are able to use their telepathy to torment us. And I think that they're a bit of a motley crew. Having engaged with them, I find them to be many times childish, vengeful, and pranksterish. Pranksterish? Pranksterish. They like to pull pranks. They like to be funny. They like to be sarcastic. I don't find anything about them funny, but nonetheless, they seem to be malicious to the core, right? Very much dark entities with dark senses of humor. Okay, and I believe that these entities mess with us out of pure joy. And there is some theory and indication that they may actually get a form of spiritual food from tormenting us, from fear, from humiliating us. That's why many of these abductions involve physical degradation, rape, probing, right, implanting of devices. So I think what we have here is the same entity. Uh, ETs, or extraterrestrial biological entities, EBEs, and demons are the same thing. But our experience with demons as spirits are really them astral projecting, using mind control, could be through some electronic or technological device, but I believe it's inherent in who they are and what they are. And they're essentially angels, fallen angels. And you might say, well, Sage, angels and demons don't have physical form, they're spirits. Okay, tell that to Jacob, who saw them descending and ascending on Jacob's ladder. And he captures one of these things and wrestles him all night long until the thing has to cheat and use some kind of supernatural way to touch Jacob's hip and disable him. Um, and so they do have a physical form. In Exodus, I believe, chapter 6, Genesis chapter 6, it talks about how the sons of God looked down upon the daughters of men and found them beautiful and took them as wives. And they had offspring that were the heroes of old, men of renown, some say giants. And so they do have a physical form. Obviously, these entities are biological. That's why they're called extraterrestrial biological entities. And so, but in 1989, this would be about the same time that Bob Lazar decides to become a whistleblower and come out with his story of backwards engineering going on at the Lake Groom facility at what we call Area 51, in the section of it called S4. And I find it interesting that his work there was on a much older craft, 10,000 years older. And I believe the reason that they chose those craft rather than the more recent ones that they have from the 20th century is because the older ones were simpler. Think about the difference between working on a Model A Ford motor or working on a 2023 Mercedes Benz engine. That it's much easier to shade tree mechanic. So there's some indication what Bob Lazar says is that the older crafts were more easily backwards engineered, and the newer crafts are so mysterious they can't make heads nor tails out of them. When you look at this timeline, you start to see that it coincides with this huge advancement in human technology, that we essentially go from the steamship to the stealth bomber in around 100 years. And that's unimaginable. When you look at human history, we have lived essentially the same way since Roman days. And the most advanced technology that we had was the horse and buggy. And then suddenly we have this huge advancement. People explain this away with a thing called exponential math. It's really the concept of momentum, that it's building one victory, technological victory on the other, using one technology to develop another one. But I've looked this up and down, and there is in no way is that possible. In no way is our advancement of technology possible, that we can go from a tube radio in the 1930s to this device that everyone has, this thing here we call a cell phone, which is a microcomputer that you carry in your hand, in the short span of 80 years, 75 or 80 years. It's just not fathomable. It's not possible. This technology has to be coming from someplace else, which leads us to these EBEs. These EBEs, these entities, were interrogated. They were pumped for information, and they were held against their will. EBE1 and EBE2 were both held against their will. We also used backwards engineering along with the testimony of these alien entities to decipher their technology and to create the technological world that we now live in. I believe this also happened in our ancient past, and this is what Genesis 6 is about, that they didn't just come for a visit and get caught. They moved in. They took wives and they set up camp here on the planet. And this is what your titans and your gods of old are based upon. These are physical beings. Angels are physical beings. Demons are physical beings, but they're also able to astral project, to project their spirit to another place. They're able to cross vast distances with their mind, with their abilities. And now they also may be using some kind of electronic amplifier to cause this to be viable and usable across vast distances, or to be give them more intense control over individuals. It does seem, when you start to look at ones who are abducted, humans that are abducted and taken onto craft, that the entities would be unbeatable because of the power they have over the human mind. They're able to inflict people with paralysis. They're able to take control of their mind. They're able to convince them to do things they wouldn't normally do under any circumstances through mental telepathy and mental manipulation that happens in a non-verbal way. And so these entities seem to be impossible to control. However, we were easily able to capture these aliens once their crafts were destroyed or disabled. That there's something about the technology that empowers them to a greater degree. And when they don't have the technology, their abilities to control people's minds, to implant thoughts, are greatly diminished. So I really think that these entities exist somewhere else, either extraterrestrial, as the name in the video title suggests, or maybe they're interdimensional. Now, let's get to the alien interview. There was, in 1989, a video released in a very interesting way. It was released to a movie maker, to a duplication and distribution company, through a shadowy character named Victor, who appeared in interviews, but only with his voice altered and in silhouette. So his identity has never been revealed. He was very careful not to reveal his identity, nor to give enough information to give you the identity of the people involved in the alien interview video. And the video is rather short. There is no audio. Victor claims it was redacted for the purpose of protecting the identity of the individuals. We didn't want them to be voice printed, or for any of their friends or family to recognize their voice. But these people have this creature uh, kept at S4, and they're interviewing it. But rather quickly into the interview, which is very low light, you can only really see the entity's head and face. And this creature starts to choke. It starts to go into distress. It's having a cardiac arrest. It's having a coughing fit. It's having something. It's regurgitating and choking on its own vomit potentially. Once again, this goes back to them having breathing problems and digestion issues when they try to live long term on this planet. And of course, these are both EB1 and EB2 are creatures that were kept here against their will. They were captured, POWs. Not unlike what Jacob did when he wrestled with the angel, that angel had to cheat to get loose from him because he was physically overwhelmed by Jacob. And so these entities are fairly weak without the use of their technology, without their craft, without their vehicle, which contains all of their technological tricks. They're not a formidable character. But when coupled with their technology, they appear to be invincible. Of course, as the Marines say, if it bleeds, we can kill it. So we're getting technological advances like the stealth technology, the micro transistors, and computer chips. All of this technology is coming from backwards engineering found or crashed spacecraft. Kevlar, the bulletproof vest, fiber optics, lasers, all of this come from these this reverse technology. But in 1989, 89 was an interesting time. We have this video coming out that was released, and apparently the same year, an extraterrestrial biological entity shows up to the American government and volunteers his service. He's come with a deal, a very interesting deal. Dun dun dun. He claims to willingly release this information and technological advice and instruction to our government in exchange for human beings. Dun dun dun. They want them for experiments. They want them for genetic experiments. And one might argue they want to study us to find out our weaknesses and how we might more easily be killed. But he enters into an open agreement. This EBE, we'll call him EBE3, some call him J-Rod. He had already been surgically altered to have a voice and was very fluent in American English and could converse and actually had quite a dry sense of humor, from what some people say. And that this entity might very well still be living at this facility known as S4 on Groom Lake, and or near Groom Lake. And that this point in history is when we really get the technological booms. That's when computers take off. That's when cell phones start to become prevalent and available, and they get more and more advanced. We see huge advancements in aviation. We see huge advancements in all kinds of technology, medical procedures, and suddenly we start seeing another exponential bounce in technology in 89 that happened in my lifetime. And people say it's because EBE3 or J-Rod was not just captured, he made a deal. If you think about it, that's when the abductions start to go through the roof. That's when kids start disappearing. It's the era and the time of the face of the missing children on the back of the milk jugs. And you have kids disappearing in broad daylight. You have people who go into the woods and never come back. See the 411, is it 411? The 411 mysteries? But it talks about how in the Cascades in the Pacific Northwest that people walk in and they don't walk out. That people are sometimes snatched or disappeared within feet of their family camping there. Many of the targets are children and young adults. And it's amazing that they don't spend a lot of time getting us old critters out there. I guess our DNA is already starting to get all decrepit and creepy and turning into crypt keepers, and they're not interested in that. It's easy for me as a minister to bridge the gap between a physical EBE and a spiritual demon. A spiritual demon is the result of projection of their abilities telepathically to interfere with the human mind. When they're in their craft, when they're with their technology in person, in the flesh, as it were, they're able, according to some abductees, to cause you to become paralyzed, to have your memory completely wiped. Think Men in Black. Look into the little thingy. I'm going to flashy thingy you. No, you won't remember the video. That's okay. It's on video. You can just watch it again. Honestly, you got to laugh to keep from crying. The thought that we've turned over our children to these things in exchange for technology really just smacks of a deal with the devil. Just like my Crossroads story, where they offered me everything, including the most debaucherous things a human mind could devise, in exchange for my talents, gifts, and abilities. Of course, I turned the deal down. That's why I live in a cabin in the woods instead of a mansion. Of course, I probably would have been dead at 27 had I taken the deal. But demons and angels and extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings are all different names for the same thing. The angel and demon apparitions are mental. They are through the means of telepathy. And these more solidified encounters in the flesh, as it were, are what happens when demons take that Jacob's ladder Jacob's ladder from heaven. Maybe there's another one from the other side of the cosmic battle, but they come here more than likely through interdimensional travel, the use of wormholes, the ability. Well, if you go back to Bob Lazar, he talks about how the propulsion system works. Apparently, there's two types of of systems. One is what you might call impulse power. It's what causes the UFOs to hover, to glide along slowly, to move about like aircraft. And then in a blinking of an eye, or the flip of a switch, or the thought of an alien, they suddenly shoot straight up, or they just disappear. And it's because they're engaging the other type of propulsion system, which is more related to interdimensional travel, the use of wormholes, the folding of the universe, the creation of wormholes. That these these machines are able to reach into the distance, grab onto the matter in that space and time, and then project instantly from one place to the next. So this could be across the planet. It could be 100 feet away or 100 miles away. The propulsion and the gravitation, anti-gravity devices allow them to hover. I do believe that there is a triangular shaped craft that I personally witnessed being piloted by two human beings hovering at the edge of a fireworks display on the 4th of July in Denver, Colorado. And I witnessed this. I do believe they were wearing U.S. Air Force jumpsuits. And this triangular craft was completely blacked out, invisible in every way to the human eye in the darkness, except when the fireworks would go off, just like lightning can illuminate the sky for a moment. It would illuminate this craft, and I could see it silhouetted. And a few times, I could see straight through it because it did have windows, and I was able to see the pilots, the humanoid pilots, that literally looked like they were wearing flight suits, and it was very eye-opening. But apparently, this craft has been leaked. It may be revealed at some point when needed, just like the stealth technology was 25 years old before it was revealed during the Gulf War, because we needed it. We wanted to use it. We wanted to employ it in that battle. And so the government came out with it. So I believe there are these triangular shaped craft which do not have the second propulsion system. They don't have the ability to do interspace travel or interdimensional travel, and they are primarily anti-gravity and a standard propulsion system for what you would call impulse power. So they can move radically because of the anti-gravity effects. They can make hard turns, they can turn on a dime, they can make sudden stops that would, if you stopped in a car that fast, it would kill everybody inside. It would scramble you from the inside out. But because they're in this anti-gravity environment, they're not injured, and they're immune to the G-forces. So I think it will not be long, probably within our lifetime, if the cosmic war doesn't break out and God doesn't intervene, as we see in the book of Revelations. If this happens longer, as the old people used to say, if God tarries, there will be a time when this technology will be available commercially, and it will be available and openly used to all militaries. Whether it's lasers or Kevlar or fiber optics, I do believe our current technological state is from literally making a deal with the devil. And I think it's their goal to destroy our Christian values, to destroy our family values, to break apart society so it's more easily controlled. And we get the technology, but at what price? The price of our children. Tell me what you think in the comment section. Are extraterrestrial biological entities real? Go and find that dark video, that dark interview. I find it interesting that they interviewed a professional special effects movie guy. He watched the interview, and he believed that the thing was not a puppet. It was not movie magic. Then they interviewed the guy that was responsible for all the big movies, and with a crap-eating grin on his face, with a look of, I know something you don't know, he pronounces it a fake and claims he could do better in his studio. One guy I believe, he's on the up and coming. He probably ain't taken the deal with the devil yet. He probably hadn't signed in blood. The other one most definitely has to get to where he is in the industry. So one is believable, the other isn't. But find that video for yourself. It's pretty easy to find. It's called The Alien Interview. And there's a great 1-hour documentary from the 90s, still in the square box format, not the widescreen, with a black actor as a host, that goes through the details of this interview, and I found it to be quite credible. Are we doing deals with the devil? Are we literally entertaining aliens/demons? Or some might claim they're angels. But the Bible does say that demons masquerade as angels of light. Well, I'm out of time, and I'm out of coffee. Leave your comments in the comments section. If you got something from this, if you enjoyed this, if you'd like to see more of these, please make a contribution through the PayPal in the description. Link in the description. And we'll see you next time on Coffee Talk!